Recording?
Hello and welcome to another episode on the Cultivated channel. Today we are going to talk about grit, and it just occurred to me, so bear with us because it's live. I think one of the things though I was thinking about grit right now, I was turning everything on, was why it's important. I think it's come up in the past because it's one of the things that you should teach children because it helps them be successful. It's also one of the things that I think that unless you are the 0.001% that have some extraordinary like ability, then if you want to do something great or be successful, and I guess that could be defined as different things, slow and steady is the way to go. And I think grit is the thing that keeps you consistent in that slow and steady path. But I think that why grit is important is about being successful. And I think for me, defining successful is about reaching your goal or what you want to do or who you want to be more precisely. And so I think grit is really important. For me, when I think about grit, I can't deny that I have grit. When I try to think of where it came from, it's like the days I remember I was very, very religious about going to the gym. Now with some injuries, not so much. But now when I think about those days where you don't feel like going to the gym, where you kind of feel like, you're off or you're tired or it's late, what kept me going? And it was two things, I think, and they both kind of come from the same thing. It was my mom always being like, if you say you're going to do something, get it done. I think that my mom did it in a way that wasn't always the best long term, because for my mom, I felt like so many times she said like clean the kitchen, and I'd be clean the kitchen, and she would come and she would like check the top of the fan, and I'd be like, oh, come on, I didn't check the top of the fan, and she'd be like, clean it again. And so it was, I've always felt like I was never good enough, right? So I always had to be like strive for perfection, which is probably where my perfectionist comes from. My grandfather, on the other hand, was very different in the sense that he was always like, is this the best you can do? And I was like, yeah. And he'd be like, okay. And we'd work on improving, right? And in reference to like, if there's something to get done, get it done. And so for me, it's that thing is like, is this the best you can do? And be like, no, I can get myself at the gym. I can do 5 minutes. And that, and I think through experience in life that has adjusted to, does this just need to get done, or should this be the best I can do? Because I've had to realize that those two things don't always go well. You can't always do your best job. But I think that getting the thing done, and it depends, what the situation is, but I think that grit gets you to either of those things and gets you to show up, and I think that's so big. Showing up is so big in reference to getting stuff done. What are your thoughts on grit? What do you think about when you think about grit?
Yes, I'm just thinking about what you were saying. Is this the best I can do as a motivator? And I think for me, that is tricky because I want to do all the things all at the same time and I want to do them perfectly. So this doesn't work. That's not realistic. But being able to add something to that, saying like, is this the best I can do right now? Or considering my circumstances, because there's always something that it makes it, you have to be choosing, or you just need to show up for 5 minutes to keep the habit, or whatever it is. And like, this is the best I can do with the 20 minutes I have this afternoon, and instead of scrolling something on my phone when the time evaporates, I'm going to put it down and put on my clothes and get there. Get to the gym, for example. But I think it's is this the best I can do with what I have, whatever that context may be. And then celebrating. So being
Yes.
the like, looking in the moment is the best I can do. Like, looking forward, okay, is this about how I want to do things, who I want to be? Like, I want to be a person who exercises. So I got to do that. I'm going to be that person, and be honest about it. And also I did it, so let me celebrate.
Yeah.
Like I did this whole week. I exercised in whichever way maybe it's walking to work instead of taking a ride, and like I celebrate that for myself, because then it's the kind of positive reinforcement loop, and I think that helps with the grit, because it isn't always have to be like suffering. Oh, you know, you have grit and you're tough, but it's like also to get yourself over that hump, to do those hard things, you have to make it something that you want to do, even if it's like subconsciously trying to train yourself to like it, to see it positively.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, making it a habit. And the only way I think that it works, because you're doing something, grit, you envision when you think about grit, you know, someone gritting their
Yes.
teeth, right? Doing something they don't want to do. And so you got to reward yourself at the end to get the habit. For me, when you were talking, it also makes me think about, you know, why. And I think so many times we do it. I don't do it. My grandfather is passed away. So I don't do it for him. I do it for me. And I think that's really important in reference to, like, I think the how we do it and the outcome we've talked about, you know, but the why we do it is very important, because with grit, if you do it for somebody else, you're never going to make them happy. If you do it for success for the outside, I was just thinking about like success for yourself, but you can be like, what's successful to society, to your culture, to your religion, to your family, to your, you know, an individual, right? A friend, a family member. And that's where it kind of, you lose steam, because you grit through it, and then all of a sudden it's like giving a gift and they're just like, meh. And you're like, what? I saved up so long for that gift. And they're just like, meh, you know? And so I think grit is one of those things where there's so many things around it. I think that grit is really one of those things that's so difficult, because it has so many, you know, legs holding it up, that it makes me think about like kindness and compassion, and how we teach it to children. And that the best way is through example.
Right.
And I think that with grit, it's the same thing. I remember, like, from my perspective, I can't think of someone who had more grit than my father. He worked so hard, and he was always so tired and always working. And for me, that was like, why? Because he felt that he wanted to be successful. And what did that mean? That was like providing for his family. For him, that was success. But I think that it was empty, and that's why he felt these things that I've talked about in the past, that is empty, because he was striving for something, and no one came and be like, hey, good job for sacrificing for your family, right? He didn't get that, right? And he wanted that. He wanted that appreciation, the love. And so I think it's one of those things where, you know, if you're really disciplined, you can get a lot of grit, but you're not going to be living a very fulfilling life. And so I think that you can have grit and be very unhappy, or at least empty, in the sense that it doesn't give you anything that you want, or that drives you, or motivates you, or makes you feel like you have purpose.
I think that's a really good point. I feel like I see it a lot with friends, with colleagues of this, like, you know, really, I think it comes from a good place of wanting to deliver on what you say, wanting to do the best with limited resources that you have. I mean, our most limited resource is time, because you can't buy more of it. So thinking, okay, how you spend your time doing more work, staying later in the office, staying up later to clean the house after the kids go to bed, whatever the thing is. And that sort of why question is important to revisit, because it does take a lot of grit and perseverance and, you know, going through. And sometimes you choose, I choose, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get less sleep because this is important to me. And I'm going to finish this project this week because I know that this is the commitment that I made to myself and others. But then taking the time to zoom out, because if it's constantly like you're constantly clenching, gritting your teeth,
Like holding your breath.
Yeah, whether it's physically or kind of metaphorically in this cycle, then it doesn't work. And I think for me, that's also been really hard to say, okay, it's fine and I can push through. I love a challenge. I'm driven by deadlines. Like, that's the reality of my situation and how I work. And that's okay, but it can't always be at this level of intensity. And so I think finding ways to say, okay, right now I have to be able to lower that intensity for a little while, at least in some aspects of life, and be intentional about it. And then say, all right, now I've had a little bit of, I don't want to say rest, but like not always being on, not always being in this, like, I got to drive, drive, grit my teeth, push through. And then kind of the why. So what is the purpose, and how can I make it so that I can still deliver this project without sacrificing everything else that's on my plate, for example?
Yeah, I think for me, it makes me think about balance. That grit is an amazing thing, but if you only use it for one thing, it can be really. I would even say, like, there's a reason why, even in the book, I break it into three pieces, because I think that it is extremely important for mindset. It's how we see the world,
Yes.
right? But if you only focus on that, you're going to be lonely, because we're social beings and we need other people. And it's good that you're emotionally stable, but it's not so good if you have no one to share your peace with, right? Your life with, unless you're sociopath. But assuming that's not the case, and then the other part is, what do you do, right? And if you feel that peace, you have someone sharing that peace with you, then you automatically want to somehow help others in what you do. And all those pieces are together. And so if you grit through, like if you're a doctor and you're saving lives, you grit through that, and you don't balance the other parts, I think that you might feel purpose, but you're going to be lacking in that fulfillment, and meaning in your life, because there's no one else there sharing those victories with you. It's the same thing where, like, if you only focus on others, then you're going to always be chasing other people's approval, and you might be
Right.
really liked and a good person. I'm not saying that you're not compassionate and kind, but if you don't believe that you are compassionate and kind enough, then it's going to feel unfulfilling. And so I guess the grit is important because of the how and the why, and rewarding yourself to make it a habit so you don't have to grit so much. But where we choose to assign our grit is really important. And I think it's really hard, because in the world we get rewarded, especially with the purpose with doing something. We see all this stuff where you get more money, more power.
Right.
Your family, your friends are like, wow, you did all these things. You get these accolades, and you get these promotions and all this stuff. And it's like anything, right? You reach a goal and then you're like, I'm empty, right? And it's because, there's something else missing. And I think that's the hard part, is balancing those different things and assigning grit in different things that are important in that day or that time or that week. And like you said, sometimes, you got that deadline, so you do grit through that assignment or whatever it is. But other times, your kid's sick and you got to grit through that. And that means you got to
Right.
cancel those meetings, and you got to be there to show them that you care and take care of them, right? Assuming they're not, need to be hospitalized or anything. But the same thing with yourself. And this is where I think we kind of lack the most in reference to just being kind to ourselves, right? Because it's easy to grit for others. It's easy to grit for your job, but to grit for yourself and be like, no, this is my space. This is important. I need to take care of myself, because I don't want to burn out. I don't want to be jaded. I don't want to be resentful. I don't want to hold something against other people. Like, this is me and this is what I need. I think that I would say, from my perspective, when I see grit, it's lacking. But when I do see it, I hope that more people assign it to themselves.
I think that's an important piece that isn't as easy to see modeled and
Mm-hmm.
like see rewarded. I mean, there's more about sort of self-care that we see, taking care of yourself, giving space and time for yourself. And I think that that is an improvement over kind of past, at least it's sort of visible and there's people talking about it. But I think it's true, like being able to say, this, I'm going to do hard things. I'm going to set goals. I'm going to do this, but it's for me, and I think we started out going to the gym. And I think that's like a good one
Yeah,
where
that's true. Yeah.
it's like, this is for me. And I want to be the kind of person who exercises. I want to be a runner. So I have to run, whatever it is that can bring it more than just, oh, I'm going to the gym because I feel I should, right? Making it resonate more. But also, like, you have to push through some of the I don't feel like it moments to make it happen. And and I mean, that one's an easy one because I think a lot of people have the consciousness of it, but maybe it's also something like eating healthy, or, you know, I need to give myself time before I go to bed in the evening to just relax. And I know it's better for my sleep, and how I can set that routine and be consistent and say no to other things. This is something that I'm trying to make better for myself, because I know I need a certain amount of sleep, and I know that being able to relax, not be on a screen, not be doing anything work related right before I go to bed is really important. And that's where you don't necessarily see the kind of, oh, it's not easy to put that on social media, for example. Like, this is what I'm doing for myself. It's not flashy.
I think that's one of the hardest parts, because so much of our value in society has, it feels, at least to me, has migrated to this world of social media, that it makes it really hard to justify that grit in things like with ourselves. I think it's very difficult to say, I did nothing today, or I did nothing this hour, maybe nothing right before bed even, because then you're like, well, what'd you get out of it? Peace, right? And it's really hard. But I think it comes back to like the first point, that you got to do it for you. And because when you do it for you, like if my father, I felt, did it because he felt that that's what it was to be a good father, then it didn't matter that I never said thank you or appreciated him the way he wanted me to do it. He would have felt good, and he wouldn't have felt empty, I think. And I think it goes back to the same thing. I used to, you know, work a lot and have different awards and all this stuff. And it was very difficult for me to migrate to not getting external recognition to just internal. And it's really difficult because you have to ask yourself really difficult questions in reference to like, what is important to you? What are your priorities? And the odd thing is, I used to think that people would change how they interacted with me, how they saw me, if I didn't have so many awards or so many titles to be able to show them. But it doesn't. I think that confidence that you are successful still is a presence. It still just seeps out of an individual when they, and I guess my point here is that if you use grit to have peace, then you will also get the things that are successful for society. Because I think a lot of things are like, people look up to you, people, you know, want to be around you, people, all these different things that we see. I think we're scared if we don't have all these other things that give us power and money, that people won't have that admiration. And it's not true. And it's actually like really, for me especially, I know people with a lot of power and money, and it's really, in some ways, confusing to me, or humbling really, because when I talk, they'll listen, and I don't have any more power or money over them anymore than I like ever, because I've kind of just slowed down so much. But they listen to me because I think that peace that I have is really, really alluring. They want that. And I think that for me, that grit is really hard to be at peace with yourself over and over again. And so I guess trying to look at grit as a tool, as something worth harnessing, but then being conscious of where you assign it is really important, and not to be afraid of assigning it to yourself, because that will actually affect others and what you do and all those different things. And actually people will respect you. People will want to look up to you because of that. And I think, like you said, there's not enough examples out there. And we need that for our children. We need that for the younger generations, to see an example that isn't about posting on social media, but it's about being who you want to be. Despite what anyone says, despite what anyone thinks, just being who you want to be. It's like going up to someone, like a child asking you, like, hey, why are you doing that? And you'd be like, because it feels right for me. And that's it, right? And I think there's a power there. What are your thoughts?
I mean, bringing it back to children too, I think, like you said, setting the example is important, but because also having to communicate to a child, I think it's showing grit. When something is hard, you persevere, but then being able to make that link sort of
intentional.
Intentional. You're doing it, and then also you can identify it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it helps, especially with young children, to also say, oh, why am I doing this? How can I explain this at a 7-year-old level, for example? I am doing, yes, this is hard. I am frustrated, and it's really important to me because of this. So I'm going to keep doing this. Or, I know it's hot out. We don't want to do this activity. We don't want to go feed the homeless right now today on our weekend, but we're going to do it because this is something that we do. And we're going to do it together as a family. It's important to us. And then realizing that now, it becomes something that, yeah, I know it's okay. It's not as exciting as going, out to eat or going to play with toys together. We're going to do it. And now it's like part of what we do, and being able to say, this is how we want to do things. This is why we're doing it. And I'm also struggling with it, and I'm going to struggle through it, and we're going to struggle through it together, and seeing how that is an important part for me personally, but also for my kid to get that, to see it, witness it, be part of it, and then understand a bit more behind it.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. I will say this, that teaching is one of those things that we tend to look down towards. Not down, that's a negative connotation, but like towards younger people. Like I do some mentorships with like students like in college, and I think even then people can accept that, like, oh yeah, they're they need a mentor, right? But I also think, like, I've spoken to a lot of older people, way older than me, and we can all learn from each other.
Oh, yes.
And there's so much we don't know. Like, my kid always asks me, so many questions, and I try to make a point to highlight that I don't know. Let's ask. And I hope that translates to, there's just so much to learn and so much wisdom out there, and how we use it is extremely important. And so having these experiences, I guess, being open to being an example and teaching and being taught as well to anybody. I mean, some of the most aha moments have been talking to like a 2-year-old for me. I know it sounds odd, but it's just, they can see things so clearly because you give them all these things and they just dump it all on the table and just leave the two biggest things. And they're like, okay, this just needs to smash this. Yeah. All right. And I think there's a lot of power there. And the same thing with older people. They have a perspective because they've lived their lives, and so they just throw everything off the table, and it just like comes into this, how do you want to be remembered, or who do you want to be when you become my age? When you want to look back, what decision do you want to have made? And it's, I will say this, for me, one of the things that, there's different things that help me get through grit, but one of them is death, and thinking about, how, like you said, it's decisions. To be a healthy person, do I want to be, a good father? Do I want to be a good husband? All these things, a good son. And you think about, when I die, who do I want to be, right? And that helps when you have two hard decisions. It helps, focusing your grit and where, and all these different things. And so I think that it's really important to be open and being curious in where you use your grit, and maybe focusing your grit on something that you haven't focused on before, especially if it is important, because so many times we know we should be healthier, we know we should eat better,
right?
But we don't assign our grit because maybe we're super successful, right? But we don't use that grit to put it in that other place, and I challenge people to do that. I guess my challenge to people is to go and try to either assign, if you don't feel like you have grit, then try to make it a habit. Put those rewards, like you said. Try to be consistent, even if it's just going 5 minutes to the gym, right? Whatever you think, but make sure that it's focused towards you, into something that is good for you. Maybe it's getting better sleep. Maybe it's about eating healthier. Maybe whatever it might be, right? Maybe you're just a nicer person if you read more books. Great. Do that, right? So try to create that habit. But if you do already have that habit, trying to do something new that you haven't used your grit on, right? Because I think we all have it, but we don't realize that we can pick it up and put it somewhere else. And so trying to grit with eating healthy. And again, that could be something small about like, if you eat fast food every day, I'm not going to eat fast food every Monday. And not something that you're just going to do. It's not a fad, but I want you to be able to do it forever, right? Just Mondays, you never eat fast food. And if you can do that, I think that builds confidence in ourselves, and you realize, wow, I'm really gritty, I guess is the word. And that just changes our mindsets in reference to, hey, I can do this. I can be healthy. I just have to be consistent and slow and use my grit to get through those hard things. And I think that people will be more fulfilled in who they are. What do you think?
No, I think that there's something to a focused target, right? Like you're saying, like choosing one thing. And for me, I'm focusing on the sleep part because I know that it's so important for me. And some days are wins and some days are harder. And last night, why did I stay up late doing this? And then I think it's like also important to not punish yourself.
Yes.
Like to keep the cycle. Okay, that was a day. All right, now I'm motivated to, get another 5 days of actually prioritizing my sleep, and then celebrate those, because I slip easily into punishing, which is also not kind to myself, which defeats the purpose of putting that effort and energy towards something for myself. So I think that's one piece to add to be kind throughout, even if you slip, okay, find motivation to get back on.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Don't punish yourself. That being said, be honest with yourself, right? You know yourself better than anybody else. So don't pick something like, I don't know, if you eat fast food for every meal, don't pick not eating fast food a meal. Picking a healthier option at the fast food place for that meal, right? Something that you can do. Because what I want everyone to feel is this confidence that when you say something, you can do it. It's just this mindset. And I think we have to start small, because so many times we've never seen an example, and maybe we don't realize how much power and grit we have inside of ourselves. So starting something small. So pick something that is extremely small, extremely easy even. And once you can do that for a week, for a month, whatever feels right for you, then add to it. I think we can end it there. Yeah. I think that's a good place. So hopefully this was useful. Grit is extremely important. Grit is amazing, but why and how, and I guess the rewards and punishments and where we choose to consciously use it is extremely important. So go out there and try to use your grit to be consistently for yourself something. And hopefully that was helpful. And if you have any comments, please comment. If you want to talk about something else, please comment as well. We're always open to ideas. I came up with this literally minutes ago. If you want more information, please check out the book, The Selfish Guide. It's available on Amazon or the website, cultivita.com, or all the different social medias. There's lots of videos out there. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and stay true to you. Thanks for watching.